On December 19th, 2024, the first trailer was released for what will be a new Superman movie directed by acclaimed director James Gunn, a film that will not only serve as a new beginning for this character's franchise, but will also be the beginning of a nascent DC universe called DCEU. However, this new installment not only faces the challenge of being a good film and being well received by the audience, but it also needs to have enough economic value to be able to sustain what promises to be the beginning of a new multi-million-dollar franchise with iconic characters such as Batman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, among many others. This double challenge means that the film must balance narrative and artistic quality, with a commercial appeal strong enough to guarantee the confidence of investors and the public in the future of the DCU. However, how is that possible given the fact that the Superman character and the DC brand in general are badly damaged by a series of situations that occurred with the already finished DCEU? How is that achieved when trends indicate that the high point and assured economic well-being of superhero movies has already passed? This context poses very large and complex challenges. Not only is it about recovering lost prestige, but doing so in a market where enthusiasm for superheroes has decreased and audiences are looking for fresher and more original proposals. In this video, we will explore the main challenges facing the new Superman movie. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is essential to continue creating more videos like this. If one were to ask the question of who the three most famous superheroes in the world are, perhaps the answer to this question would not be the same today as it was 4 decades ago. In 1980, Superman was indisputably one of the most recognizable franchises in global popular culture. Christopher Reeve's portrayal in 1978's Superman the Movie and 1980's Superman 2 had set a standard for superheroes in cinema. Superman was not just a hero, he was a cultural icon, a figure who transcended comic books and positioned himself as a role model. This was clearly reflected in the box office receipts of those films, which turned out to be huge hits for producers and Warner Brothers. However, times have changed. With the arrival of new generations of heroes and the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, characters such as Iron Man, Captain America, and Spider-Man have taken the spotlight. These heroes have adapted to contemporary tastes, offering more complex stories and characters that modern audiences can more easily identify with. Meanwhile, Superman has struggled to stay relevant, caught between nostalgia for his past, poor creative decisions from the past millennium, and the difficulty of finding a place in the present. Unquestionably, one of the first major stumbles in Superman's cinematic history occurred with 1983's Superman 3, directed by renowned comedy filmmaker Richard Lester. While Lester is a talented filmmaker, his approach to a heavily humorous and cartoonish tone proved to be a turn that many fans of the character could not accept. The film left behind much of the epic heroism and emotional depth that had defined the previous installments, leaning toward a narrative that many considered shallow and misguided. Superman 3 not only alienated a significant portion of the fan base, but also marked the beginning of a creative decline for the franchise. While Superman 3 did not prove to be a complete box office failure, it is a fact that there was a decline in box office receipts. More problems followed with 1987's Superman 4, a film that suffered from both budgetary constraints and poor execution on every level. Although it attempted to recapture the tone and elements that had made the first 2 installments successful, the severe economic and technical restrictions resulting from its production under Canon Films resulted in a final product that did not meet expectations. The lack of resources was reflected in low-quality special effects, a weak narrative, and an approach that failed to connect with audiences or critics. This failure not only buried the Man of Steel in the cinema for almost 2 decades, but also left a deep mark on the perception of his potential as a film franchise. For years, Superman was relegated to the background, with no project capable of vindicating him until the release of Superman Returns in 2006. However, although this film worked better than Christopher Reeve's final 2 installments, it failed to fulfill its objective. Despite its greater coherence, its lack of action, somber tone, and excessive budget prevented it from completely revitalizing the character, making it clear that the task of updating Superman for new generations was still pending. During the development of what we would later know as Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder, the world witnessed the emergence of new superheroes who, at the time, were relatively unknown. This was linked to the emerging Marvel Cinematic Universe, whose definitive boom came with the release of the Avengers in 2012. This event consolidated heroes like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and Hulk as multi-million-dollar and globally recognized intellectual properties, while displacing other heroes like Superman, who at that time were not present on the big screen. All of the above caused the displacement of an icon, who was relegated while giving way to more complex and imperfect heroes like Batman and Iron Man. However, what James Gunn promises is a return to the roots of what made Superman work in 1978. In the current global context, the figure of a hopeful and altruistic hero is more relevant than ever, which could be key to the success and restoration of this icon in the collective imagination. It's no surprise that the now defunct DCEU failed to establish DC as a competitive franchise, especially when compared to the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There are a number of reasons why the DCEU didn't work. Some point the finger at Zack Snyder, accusing him of taking iconic characters like Superman and Batman away from their core after more than 80 years of history. Others prefer to focus on the creative chaos that followed Snyder's departure, with figures like Jeff Johns, Walter Hamada, Dwayne Johnson, among others, trying to impose their own visions without considering the stability of the brand, resulting in a disconnection with the audience who ultimately lost interest in what they saw on screen. Finally, there are those who point to James Gunn, who was in charge of putting an end to the chaos of the DCEU, perhaps prematurely. This decision caused films like Shazam 2, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2, the last vestiges of the DCEU, to fail miserably at the box office. The reality is that the end of the DCEU cannot be attributed to a single event. Rather, it was a series of factors that ended up alienating an audience that, at first, showed great interest. This is demonstrated by the record that Batman v Superman achieved as the superhero film with the highest worldwide grossing in its first week of release. However, despite this initial success, the audience ended up becoming disenchanted with the brand's proposals. In particular, Superman was one of the most mistreated characters throughout this process. From the beginning, he was conceived as the pillar of the saga that Zack Snyder wanted to develop, but he went through cameos without the presence of Henry Cavill that led nowhere. Finally, after a cameo by Cavill that promised his triumphant return as Superman, he ended up saying goodbye sadly in an Instagram post, leaving behind what could have been his return to the character. A DC universe without Superman cannot work, and that is why a structural challenge is to have this character as the center of the proposal, an idea that James Gunn seems to be embracing in a good way with the DC Studios intro and with the explosive teaser trailer for the film. Facts that generate hope in the audience. In the end, this new film must be able to regain both the trust of the franchise's most loyal fans and the interest of those who are simply looking for a good film. After more than 10 years of a negative streak for the DCEU, it has become clear that the path to success is to offer solid, quality proposals. Examples such as Joker and the Batman demonstrate that, ultimately, the real challenge lies in creating a well-made film that manages to captivate the public, regardless of the universe to which it belongs. One of the biggest debates surrounding Superman is whether the character is out of his time and needs a modernization, or, if on the contrary, he should return to his classic roots to recover his original essence. Zack Snyder, for many, proposed a vision that attempted to modernize the character. After the success of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, it seemed logical that this would be the right path to approach Superman in a darker and more realistic context. Snyder, with Man of Steel, attempted to make the character fit contemporary times, focusing on a more serious and dramatic tone that would resonate with a modern audience. However, this vision polarized fans. While some applauded the more mature and complex approach, others felt that it strayed too far from the heroic and hopeful essence that had always characterized Superman. The character seemed to be caught between being a timeless figure of hope and justice and a darker, more troubled hero in line with contemporary cinema trends. Other proposals, such as Superman Returns, attempted to return to Christopher Reeve's classic style, but adapted to modern times. However, this approach also failed to completely win over fans, resulting in a film that, although not a complete failure, also failed to return Superman to his full glory. Choosing the right approach for a Superman film is no easy task, as opinions are deeply divided and there is no conclusive evidence to prove which of the two positions is more likely to result in commercial success. However, it is important to remember that in comics, Superman is not limited to being one or the other. His interpretation varies according to the era and the author, always keeping his essence as a character intact. For example, we can mention works like Kingdom Come by Mark Waid, which offers a more mature and serious vision of Superman, adapted to the context of a world that has changed and in which the Man of Steel faces the decline of traditional heroes. This version of Superman shows a more reflective figure, concerned about the future of the world, but always guided by his fundamental principles. Also relevant is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore, a story that presents a more introspective and melancholic version of Superman, confronting his mortality and change. This work highlights the vulnerability of the character, but without compromising his essence, which shows that Superman can adapt to different tones without losing what makes him unique. The interesting thing about these interpretations is that, although they address different facets of the character, both maintain the core of what makes Superman relevant. This shows that there is no single correct way to represent Superman, but it depends on the context and how you want to explore his figure within a story, which in turn poses a challenge for the upcoming film. A key example that can serve as a foundation for James Gunn's take on Superman is the MCU's Captain America, who has become a prime example of how to adapt a superhero with seemingly outdated values, such as honor and sacrifice, to a modern audience. Throughout the films, Steve Rogers embodies a hero of unwavering principles in a world that often tests those values. His adaptation to film shows how a seemingly old-fashioned character can stay relevant by contextualizing his principles within contemporary situations, challenging the cynicism of his surroundings without losing his essence. The key to his success lies in the fact that, although his ideals are firmly traditional, the MCU stories never present him as an anachronism, but rather as a figure who, despite being from the past, offers a moral compass amidst modern chaos. This is something that the DCEU could adopt when reimagining Superman, a hero also grounded in principles of hope and justice. Like Captain America, Superman can be presented as a model of firm values, not as something obsolete, but as a beacon in times of uncertainty. Adapting a superhero as iconic as Superman is no easy task, especially when it involves not only capturing the essence of the character, but also starting a new cinematic universe with all that entails. The complexity lies in finding a balance between modernizing the character so that it resonates with contemporary audiences, without losing sight of its classic roots that made it a timeless icon. In addition, this challenge is amplified by the need to create an attractive narrative that not only retains longtime fans, but also manages to captivate new viewers. Opening a new universe involves building a solid foundation for future stories, which requires Superman not only to be relevant in his own film, but also to work within a broader franchise. The key will be to ensure that the character does not become a figure of nostalgia, but a symbol of hope and altruism that can connect with new generations, while honoring his legacy. The future of Superman in the cinema will depend on how filmmakers manage to navigate between these divided expectations. Whether opting for a more classic version or taking a more modern approach, the key will be to find a narrative that reflects the character's universal values, such as kindness, perseverance, and hope for a better tomorrow. These are the pillars that have made Superman transcend for more than 80 years, and they are also the foundation on which a cinematic universe can be built that, if handled with care and vision, could restore him to his place in popular culture. Thanks for watching.